This is the Earth Science Classroom. Welcome back. This video is Beaches Part 3. So it's in the Geomorphology playlist and can also be linked with, obviously, oceanography. And we're looking at beaches, beach types, and morphodynamics, and the energy types that will produce different profiles. Now, why these videos are so cool is that you could live by a beach or vacation or holiday at a beach, maybe with your family, or maybe as a child you went to the beach, and as an adult or adult you can't get there because of work or family, you moved away. But beaches hold a special place in people's hearts, and they're magical places of changing scenery, and memories, and being in the water and the ocean, and laying on the sand and sunbathing and getting nice and tan. Even just getting away from the daily grind of working 9 to 5. But you may not appreciate or even know that there are different kinds of beaches around the world because you haven't been there before. And you don't always see them on TV or documentaries, but you see there are a wide range of beaches, and they're created in a certain way, a certain process. And this video is going to discuss that. So it's going to look at the 3 types of energy producing processes, or the process that provides the energy that is being dissipated at the shoreline, at the beach, at the interaction between the land and the ocean, to create a certain beach profile or morphodynamic environment. And look at the differences between the beaches caused by different kind of energy, and the resulting characteristics for each type. So in part 1 we discussed basically what is a beach and how's it formed and what's it formed from. So please check it out if you haven't seen it. Part 2 is all about a bit more detail in the deposition, the types of beaches you can get and how they form. And we left off part 2 looking at the 3 main types of beaches, which was wave dominated, which looks like this, obviously. Alright, in the top left corner. We have tide modified, which looks like that, where you do have some wave action, and obviously some tidal range as well. And then you have just the tide dominated, which is this bottom left-hand image right here, where the waves are very, very minimal, and the tides are the principal transportation mechanism that the energy is then taken from the ocean and then dumped and dissipated onto the shoreline, thus creating a certain beach profile. Alright, so join me now. So take our 3 types. So I'm going to call this the 3 types of moving energy. Moving the energy from the ocean onto the land, and obviously the shoreline, the beach, is the area of concern, and this is the interface where the energy is going to be dissipated. Okay, so it basically ends at the beach, where the energy is going to create a set of different beach profiles or morphodynamics. And obviously, if it's pretty much small tides, right, and mostly waves, it's wave dominated. If there's going to be a mixture or medium amount of both tides and waves, it'll be called tide modified. And if there is just predominantly tidal range and tidal forces applied to the beach, and with minimal wave action, minimal wave height, and minimal energy from waves, then it'll be tide dominated. So it's basically put a little arrow, a little process, little connection between the 3 types of energy transference through the ocean, and it's going to create different profiles. Now, these are separated into 3 different types. And the first type is called reflective, or reflective beach. So think of that as a profile. These are all profiles. Then we have the intermediate. Again, that's segue between the 2 extremes or 2 different types. Okay, the intermediate. All right, and then the third one is going to be dissipative. So these 3 types of beach profiles are created from either one or a number of these different types of energy transference. Either it's wave dominated, tide modified, or tide dominated. So now reflective type of beach profile, or morphodynamic, is going to be linked with pretty much the waves of varying heights. Don't forget, the height of the waves is what provides the energy, which then molds the beach to a certain profile. Waves of varying heights. Now, generally they are smaller or low waves, low wave height, generally. But reflective can be linked with wave-dominated beaches. Okay, so the waves are small and there's less tidal range. And when I talk about tidal range, I'm looking at or talking about the RTR, which is the abbreviation of relative. Relative tidal range. And the tidal range, again, is the distance or difference between the high tide mark and the low tide mark. And that produces what's called an intertidal zone. Okay? Some beaches have a very small RTR and small range, and some have a very large range. Okay? As we go down here, as we go down from wave to tide dominated, you increase the RTR. Okay, so obviously tide dominated, you have a very, very large, from 10 to 50 times the size of the wave height tidal range. So you drastically change the profile and the style of the beach, basically, how it's formed. So a reflective basically means that here's the ocean, right? Here's the swell, direction of swell, and the waves approach, and what happens is that there isn't much going on out here offshore. The surf zone, breaker zone would be closer to shore, and the breakers or even the spilling waves, or depends on the type, but it would basically be happening around here. And what would happen is it would hit the beach and then reflect back. Some of the energy in the water, in the waves, would reflect back. Now this could create a steeper profile, a steeper berm, and a sand cliff right here. If it's more wave dominated, or if it's tide modified, it would be slightly less, and obviously tide dominated will be a very, very, very gentle profile, and the water would just reflect off slowly. But the waves can vary, but the profile or the gradient, which can basically go from sandy beaches, which is basically 1 degree up to 8 degree gradient, or the coarser sand, or even pebbles, can be as higher gradient as 20 up to 20 degree gradient. So that's going to dictate the amount of reflective energy off the beach, off the shoreline, and back in the ocean, and dictate the profile. So you have the next type of beach profile or morphodynamic environment is called dissipative. Now dissipative means that the waves are going to break, far away or away from the shore or the beach. So in this diagram, you would have the waves, the breakers, right, are going to basically break, and the surf zone is going to be further out over here. And the energy that is provided by the varying wave heights, depending on the type of energy where it comes from, whether it's wave or tide generated, you're going to have the energy basically dissipate along the open coastline further away from the beach. Now, you might get some turbulent water, you might get some bores here that are going to force the water up and create a large swash and backwash, which would then create a certain profile with more erosional qualities, more destructive functionality, and also constructive too, with the amount of sediment if it's going to have a nice bit of swash. So the energy is going to be further away and dissipate, and this usually happens in open coastlines. It's going to be varying, obviously, height of the waves. It is really only linked with tide modified and wave dominated. Obviously, wave dominated is more an obvious choice based on the diagram and what I'm saying, but also the mixture of the tides as well would also play a factor and create this type of profile. The tide dominated, you wouldn't get much dissipative environments because of the nature of where the energy is coming from with the tides. So the beach profile or bathymetry, the elevation, it's going to be kind of gentle, a gentle gradient or slope, and provide a large area, a large wide surf zone. That's going to provide ample generation of lots of bars and troughs, and obviously rip tides, and maybe the occasional longshore drift or currents. Depends on the littoral cell and the near shore circulation, and obviously the location of the bars and the troughs, and maybe even a submarine canyon, and shoaling as well, where it's going to shoal. So you do get some shore breaks and bores that occur by the coastline, but most of the energy is going to dissipate far away from the coastline and send it through either turbulent water and basically dictate the change in the gradient and be more gentle slope, a gentle gradient. So the last type of beach profile or morphodynamic environment is going to be intermediate beach. Now, obviously, by the definition of the word intermediate, it is between both reflective and dissipative. It's that profile that is more of a combination of different features that link in between the two. So the reflective is going to be that close to shore, bouncing back energy. Dissipative is the further away energy. There are lots of breakers and wave height and energy being put into the ocean, and then eventually get into the coastline later on. A little lag time or delay for the energy. Intermediate has a bit of both. It has some of the swash and backwash. It has some of the bores and the shore breaks, and the energy being dissipated close to shore, which would then change the beach and have some cusps and some ripples and different features, and berms are created. Or you might get the energy again coming out here in a surf zone far away, and maybe dissipate out here, and more of a dissipative type, and might have a reformed wave in here, which would then reform after this one's been broken. Okay, the breaker, and reform, and maybe form a new bore or shore break up here by the coastline, by the beach. So there's a mixture of different features, and intermediates really only are linked with this wave dominated. So wave dominated is where you have the intermediate type of beach profiles. And with the varying distance from the coastline where the energy is dissipated, you do get a lot of different features, from the longshore bars to the shoreline to parallel bars to troughs to riptides, transverse bars, and also the terraces. Terraces would be that kind of plateau before it reaches the beach face and up here. So that little terrace there, which could then again slow down and make it more consistent wave energy right here, and slow it down so it would break more as swash and as a shore break. So we've gone through the three types of beach profiles: reflective, intermediate, and dissipated, right? And which one's there? So wave dominated, again, wave dominated has characteristics. So I'm going to put a little line down here, and let's do this, little characteristics. Here we go. So the tides, or the tidal range, I'm going to put the RTR, is generally less than 2 meters. You usually obviously get the wave energy, and the wave height is going to provide the energy, and it varies. And the beach profile, the beach gradient, can be between 5 degrees to 20 degrees. Okay, and you mostly have a range of sand from fine to medium, basically, or you might also get maybe some coarse sand as well. So what types of profiles are created? So you do get the reflective beach profile with wave dominated. You also get 4 different types of intermediates, and those different types include things like having a rhythmic bar, so basically bars in a certain place and a pattern of swash and backwash, and onshore and offshore movement of transport of water and sediment, transverse bars which come out perpendicular basically, or even have a low terrace. So the different types of intermediates based on what they form. The feature on the ocean floor because of the size of waves and the low gradient. Then you also have dissipative as well. So that also happens. Then you get tide modified. Tide modified, again, is that mixture of tides and waves. There's more of a balance. So you can get varying different features. Varying features created. Now, mostly you have reflective, okay, and also a thing called ultra dissipative. So you don't get basically no intermediates. There's no intermediates right there, okay? Because of the tides. The tides would have an effect on that and just create either reflective where it's close to the shore, or they're basically really, really far away from the shoreline, which is ultra dissipative. So it's really far away, so because the tides affect that consistent pattern of movement of water caused by gravitational pull, that creates the issues with creating the different variations on features. So the tide range, or the RTR, is going to be 3 to 15 times the wave height. So the wave height is, let's say, 1 meter, okay? Then it's going to be, 3 times 1, so 3 meter RTR. Or if or up to 15, okay, up to 15 meters RTR. Depends on the beach. So, and the waves are getting smaller, so smaller waves. There we go. So tide dominated. So this is mostly tides. The types of profiles you generate are mostly reflective. And there's 4 types of reflective based on the different features Each one has a certain feature. So they have 4 different types of reflective beach profile created by the tide-dominated energy process, pretty much. Now, we get a very, very low gradient. Low gradient, okay, low profile. And you're going to have an RTR of 10 up to 50 times the wave height. Now, yes, the wave height gets smaller and smaller and smaller as the tide influence increases, but still, you get a very wide, very substantial range of the high tide to low tide, thus creating a very, imposing intertidal zone, which again has its own features and promotes various other environments. So with this tide-dominated beach, you'll get a lot of sand flats. Okay, you'll get a lot of tidal flats, especially with a large tidal range. You will get ridges. And again, with the lack of wave height and wave energy, the tides are going to produce obviously deltas near inlets and also sand ridges. So this is very conducive to forming on the ocean floor these different features. The waves can also create bars and troughs, but they're more dynamic. They can change a lot. The tides are more rhythmic and more pattern-based. And the rule of thumb with the wave height, which will either be reflective, intermediate, or dissipative, that the wave heights, obviously wave dominated, has the largest waves. Wave heights that are 2 to 4 meters on average, the wave height. With tide modified, you're looking at the 1 to 2 meter average wave height when they for the breakers. And obviously 0 to 1 meter for the tide dominated. So as the tides increase their influence on the energy they provide and dissipate on the coastline, the waves are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video and got some information out of it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.